Before this video on Tsu'tey begins, I just wanted to make it known that there's going to be spoilers for Avatar: The Way of Water. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Tsu'tey, or Tsu'tey Rongloa Ateyitan, or Tsu'tey for short, is perhaps one of the most underrated male-side protagonists in any of the sci-fi films directed by James Cameron in the year 2009. And in the year 2154, we meet Tsu'tey on the moon of Pandora, and our lives were never the same again. Of all the warriors of the Omaticaya clan, Tsu'tey was the best. He was the #1 warrior, and because of this, he was on his way to become the next Olo'eyktan, or clan leader of the Omaticaya, when Eytukan, the current clan leader, eventually, dies. By the way, my favorite way someone described the differences between the Olo'eyktan and the Tsahìk, or spiritual leader of the clan, would be what Mawat says in the comic Tsu'tey's Path, claiming an Olo'eyktan must wait to hear Ewa. A Tsahìk, however, is always listening. In order to better understand Tsu'tey, we have to go all the way back to the beginning, like his upbringing and stuff. Specifically, his time at Grace's school, as there was an event that happened at Grace's school that has like a huge impact on Tsu'tey, and Neytiri, and Grace, and basically everyone on Pandora. But we're just going to talk about Tsu'tey mainly. But right before we do that, we're going to talk about today's sponsor, G2A, a marketplace for digital products like Steam game keys for games like Hogwarts Legacy. Right now, if you buy yourself a Hogwarts Legacy Steam game key, or just like anything else on their website, you could win a trip to Universal Studios' Wizarding World of Harry Potter. Click the link below in the description or the comment section, or stick around and keep watching the video to find out more. Anyway, back to the really depressing, game-changing stuff that happened at Grace's school. In this deleted scene from Avatar 2009, Grace takes Jake and Norm to the old school for the Na'vi, a school that was established by Grace that she ran for 10 years. This place is where she taught the Na'vi children, also known as Na'vi hunters, all about mathematics, like basic addition and like geometry, astronomy, like studying the Alpha Centauri system, and of course, the English language. Grace claims that the hunters were bright and eager to learn. They could even pick up the English language faster than she could teach it. Neytiri and Tsu'tey were former students of hers, which is why Jake Sully goes on to say this.
Where'd you learn to speak English? Dr. Augustine's school?
But hold on for a second. What happened to the school? Why is it now only used for storing research equipment? Well, a lot of the reason has to do with these bullet holes. Upon discovering the bullet holes in Grace's chalkboard, Jake is all like,
"What happened here?"
And Grace is all like,
"You gonna help us with this gear? We've got a lot to do."
And Norm is all like, "I'm just gonna stand over here and pretend like I'm not existing." Right before this very awkward encounter, Grace claims that the Omaticaya learned as much about the humans as they needed to know. I know at this point you're probably thinking like one of two things. The first one being why I still haven't answered the two questions I just asked approximately 23 seconds ago. And the second one being, why is my Instagram feed full of nothing but endless videos of raccoons? I'm assuming we're all thinking of the first one. So don't worry, what's going to answer those two questions, and not the question regarding my raccoon problem, would be this other deleted scene.
We can't be ruled by emotion. But I've put 10 years of my life into that school. That kind of pain reaches back through the link.
Much later in the film, Grace is more open to sharing stuff with Jake, as you literally just saw. So when Jake is manually scrolling through Grace's photos from the school, he then decides this is a pretty good opportunity to ask this question once more.
What did happen at the school, Grace?
Grace explains that Neytiri's older sister, Sylwanin, stopped coming to school because she was angry at the humans over the clear cutting.
She was angry about the clear cutting.
Something the humans were prone to do, as this was just one of many acts of deforestation that the humans were carrying out in the entirety of the rainforest. Sylwanin and a couple of other hunters were fed up, so they painted themselves in war paint and went on to destroy a bulldozer by setting it on fire. Just normal teenage stuff. But the bad part is that one of the RDA's SecOps squads followed the hunters back to Grace's school, where they ended up killing Sylwanin in the doorway right in front of Neytiri, and then proceeded to shoot the other hunters responsible for the bulldozer destruction. Grace was able to get all of the Omaticaya children out of the school safely, but after that, the humans were permanently banned from the Omaticaya settlement. Before her sister was brutally unalived right in front of her, Neytiri maintained close relationships with people like Grace and other scientists in the Avatar program. So Neytiri went from this happy-go-lucky, learning is fun and humans are pretty okay kind of mindset, to this I'm going to kill every human or avatar on sight kind of mindset. Another reason, on top of the many reasons as to why this story is tragic, is because Tsu'tey, Neytiri, and all the other students would refer to Grace as Sa'nuk, meaning mother, really viewing her as this parental figure.
They called me Sa'nuk. Mother.
Grace even claims that Sylwanin and the other hunters retreated back to the school because they thought that Grace could protect them, something she failed to do. This event is why Grace is very cold and bitter when we're first introduced to her. Grace clearly understood that as a scientist, you have to remain objective.
A scientist stays objective.
But after teaching at that school for 10 years, dude, she grew so much love for the Omaticaya and her students. The incident at the school explains why Grace just did not like Jake Sully at first, preferring to have his brother, who was a scientist, operate the Avatar and not another hired gun. But on the bright side, it looks like Jake Sully kept up Grace's tradition of taking these Polaroid pictures in the way of water. I really like that detail. Anyway, Sylwanin's death is the reason the tensions between the Omaticaya and the Sky People were growing larger than ever before. The massacre that happened that day also hit Tsu'tey in a way that was never described in the actual film. Sylwanin was the original Tsahìk in training. Neytiri only became the next successor after her sister's death. So Tsu'tey, being the Olo'eyktan in training, was initially promised to Sylwanin, as they were to become a mated pair. Even though Tsu'tey and Sylwanin had this arranged marriage, it worked out for the best, because they truly did love each other. So everything was working out, well, until, the whole thing with the, death. But to make you feel a little bit better, Sylwanin would refer to Tsu'tey as Yantu, meaning loved one. After her death, Tsu'tey was set up with Neytiri. Neytiri did understand that Tsu'tey was her betrothed, not his beloved. I mean, Tsu'tey did love Neytiri, just not romantically. Both of them understood that they needed to become this formidable pair for the good of the clan. In fact, they really bonded over the loss of Neytiri's sister. Her death was something that Tsu'tey couldn't let go of. So if you've been watching my videos, which hopefully you have been, by now you probably know that places like the Tree of Voices, the Spirit Tree, or the Tree of Souls give each Na'vi the ability to upload their thoughts, memories, and even dreams to Eywa, which is this global consciousness of the moon connected by all these tree roots or plants under the sea. Think of it as one big computer. So when a living Na'vi makes the bond with the tree, they can essentially communicate with the dead, but they'd be communicating with a version of their loved one that only remembers the last time they made the bond with the tree. Which is why at the end of The Way of Water, Neytiri doesn't understand why his dad is so upset. Tsu'tey would constantly visit the Tree of Voices to communicate with the memories and consciousness of Sylwanin. However, he would be stuck talking to a version of her that was more naive and optimistic about Grace and the rest of the humans, which did tend to stress Tsu'tey out. Certain Na'vi can fall victim to, I don't know, let's call it Spirit Tree addiction, where they are completely consumed by the memories, needing to relive them and communicate with the dead over and over again. Tsu'tey was definitely falling victim to this. In fact, he could be the freaking poster child of this addiction. He actually did it so much that during the first night where Jake is accepted into Home Tree, Neytiri shows Jake to his hammock and then sneaks off in the middle of the night to go talk to Tsu'tey, knowing full well that he was at the Tree of Voices. Now at this point, hopefully we can all see where Tsu'tey's unquestionable hatred towards all Sky People is coming from. And if he still can't, in the final edit of Avatar, they made it seem like Tsu'tey had a thing for Neytiri, and that his crush on her was the main reason he was upset that, she was falling for Jake. But as you and I know by now, that's not the case. Tsu'tey was more upset at how Neytiri and Jake's relationship was affecting the rest of the clan. Take this moment for example. After Jake Sully successfully slays a stern beast using a bow and arrow while riding an Eytukan, he passes one of his rites of passage. So the Omaticaya throw on this event called the Hunt Festival. During the Blue Flute Clan's festivals, they play music which inevitably causes dancing. Neytiri, feeling wild, asks/forces Jake to dance with her. It's funny how Neytiri jokingly says that this is the way when pulling Jake onto the dance floor.
It is the way.
This right here is just one of many reasons as to why Tsu'tey is resentful. Jake getting with Neytiri and interfering with thousands of years of tradition is not the way. So even though Tsu'tey was growing fond of Jake,
I thought enough drink, you would not
be so ugly.
He still had to put the interests of the Omaticaya first. Mawat, observing this as well, claims that they cannot let that seed grow. Neytiri's path is with Tsu'tey. If Neytiri mates with Jake in front of Eywa, which she does end up doing, she will end up choosing a path that would not allow her to become the next Tsahìk of the clan. From Tsu'tey and everyone else's perspective, this is a bad thing, because you know, the formidable pair stuff. But wait, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. What was Tsu'tey up to for the first like half of Avatar? Because the only time we really see him during that time is when he's just insulting Jake. While Neytiri was teaching Jake in the ways of the Omaticaya, Tsu'tey was off teaching younger Na'vi or hunters who were on the cusp of becoming warriors. This is the same group of hunters that Jake joins when they're traveling up to the Hallelujah Mountains in order to make their first Sahelu or bond with the mountain banshee or Ikran. Basically, when Neytiri is teaching Jake how to ride a pale or live off the land, Tsu'tey is teaching these hunters the same exact thing. Which is why Tsu'tey kept running into Jake, giving him the opportunity to deliver some more of those toasty insults. The young hunters would refer to Tsu'tey as Eikyu, meaning leader. During this time, Tsu'tey was focused on pushing the hunters to be better and pushing them beyond their believed limitations. At the time, Tsu'tey was Eikyu, and he was an Olo'eyktan in training, yet he still regresses to a more childlike state of nervousness when Grace and Norm are accepted back into the Omaticaya settlement. And yeah, I know what you're thinking, but you heard that right. They also allowed Norm back into their territory. Remember when Norm was upset that Jake was the fresh face welcomed into the Omaticaya clan? Especially after Norm trained 3 years for the mission, logged over 500 hours in lane time, and speaks the Na'vi language fluently, only to end up having to take care of Jake while he's driving his avatar.
He falls off the frickin' turnip truck and all of a sudden he's the cultural ambassador?
It's not our choice, Norm.
Well, you know what? I didn't come here to wash dishes while you're on some interspecies booty call.
But something that was never shown in the final edit of Avatar for some unfathomable reason is that Norm showed up in the village with Grace. And Mawat even compliments Norm's formal approach to the language.
He speaks well.
Anyway, what was I initially talking about? Oh yeah, Tsu'tey wasn't intimidated by someone like Norm, even though Norm is a living god.
I am a living god.
He was intimidated by Grace. As a former student of her school, the two of them had a close relationship. When Grace returned, it was the first time that Tsu'tey saw her since the massacre. As mentioned before, Tsu'tey was incredibly nervous to run into her again, but when he does, he's incredibly rational and empathetic towards her. He first opens the conversation by claiming, "I see you" in English, and telling her that he remembers everything from her teachings. And he still refers to her as Satnuk. During this reunion, Grace and Tsu'tey show their feelings about Jake, mostly about whether or not to accept this former Jarhead clan member. Grace's concerns were being erased at that point, yet Tsu'tey still had his reservations. Honestly, I love how the more you learn about Tsu'tey, the more you realize that he wasn't too proud because of his ego. He needed to be proud for the people. Trust me, he had proper training from Eytukan, meaning Tsu'tey understood what was required of him to become a good leader. He was still this top-tier warrior on the path of becoming Olo'eyktan. For Tsu'tey's entire life, in times of great challenge, he never really knew what to do. Like the time he lost his first Pale, to when he lost Sylwanin, to when Jake was brought into the Omaticaya settlement, and of course when he had to lead the Omaticaya after Eytukan passed. Tsu'tey witnesses all this death and destruction but doesn't know what to do or how to prevent it. He knows who caused most of it and claims that all the sky people know is death and destruction, thinking that that's all the humans are capable of doing. During Jake's first dinner with the Omaticaya, where Jake tries Telu for the first time,
Watch them damn fine Telu. It's like grandma's Telu.
Tsu'tey gives his initial thoughts on Jake Sully and the rest of the humans. They're not the most complimentary thoughts. However, in my opinion, Grace was a huge part in Tsu'tey giving Jake a chance, and why Tsu'tey didn't just close himself completely off from Jake.
Be so ugly.
Tsu'tey would eventually go on to help Jake through the dream hunt ceremony, participating in prayer to help Jake experience this true vision from Eywa, doing stuff like hissing in his face to ward off impure spirits. So it's like a friendly kind of hissing in your face. After watching Jake successfully take down a stern beast during Ikna Iknamaya. Tsu'tey gave Jake Sully credit where credit is due. By the time of the Hunt Festival, he saw Jake as something more, claiming that humans hide behind their machines and attack from afar. But Jake is the first sky person he's met who's actually brave. And then Grace is over here like, do I mean nothing to you? Tsu'tey put a lot of emphasis on humans being cowards who fight from far away. So you can imagine his disappointment and sheer betrayal when he discovers that Jake is a human warrior fighting from far away by using a false body. Grace alone has proved that it is possible for humans to live peacefully amongst the Na'vi, that the two cultures can coexist with each other. Moa embraced the idea of this cohabitation early on, as she made the choice to learn English and allowed Grace's school to, you know, be there. Moa, being the Tsahìk, pretty much makes her the wisest potato chip of the clan. So if she's cool with it, everyone else should be cool with it. In the comic Tsu'tey's Path, Moa claims that anger cost Sylwanin her life, basically warning Tsu'tey that he shouldn't let his resentment towards the humans get the best of him, that he must think rationally going forward. Tsu'tey would go on to adopt some of her teachings, putting his anger aside to help Jake through, you know, the dream hunt process or other stages of Iknamaya. One of my favorite details about this deleted scene during the Hunt Festival would be how Tsu'tey challenges Jake to a drink-off. Jake accepts and then chugs this one drink that Tsu'tey hands him, and everyone cheers Jake. The same thing happened at the beginning of the film where Jake is at the bar on Earth, and everyone is cheering Jake in the same way, poetically communicating to us that he's found a place where he belongs. This actually seems like a pretty important time to mention one of the most important things that they left out of the final edit of Avatar. But wait, hold on, pump the brakes for like 20 seconds. How exactly do you enter the G2A contest where they're giving up to 5 people a trip for 2 to Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida, specifically so that you could go to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter? Well, all you gotta do is click on the link in the description or in the comments below, buy anything on G2A.com, copy the order number, go back to the contest page, type in the info, and press send. And all you gotta do from that point on is wait to see if you're going to Hogwarts. And speaking of Hogwarts, remember when the Tree of Voices got destroyed as the humans basically erased the entire history of the Omaticaya? Well, Tsu'tey and other members of the Omaticaya saw that, and they didn't like it. In fact, they didn't like it one bit. So Tsu'tey and friends ended up raiding the RDA's bulldozers and amp-suit squads responsible for said destruction. The bulldozers ended up burning in flames, just like how Sylwanin and other hunters set a bulldozer on fire a few years prior.
Equipment's totaled.
History was repeating itself, except this time it was way more violent because in this case in particular, Tsu'tey and company took the lives of 6 humans working for the RDA.
6 bodies, that's all of them.
Tsu'tey's act of war was recorded and sent back to Hell's Gate, also known as the main RDA settlement. By the way, you can see footage from this deleted scene in Avatar: The Way of Water, when the RDA is like playing a bunch of footage of their war with the Na'vi thus far. But in the year 2154, all of the soldiers at Hell's Gate were shown live video feed of the aftermath of Tsu'tey's destruction. The loss of the soldiers caused Colonel Miles Quaritch to go into a not chill mode, as he was very much wanting to retaliate. This incident between the Omaticaya and the RDA threw any peace negotiations out the window. Also, I'm just gonna say it, the uncut version of the Colonel paints him as less of a cartoon villain and more of someone who just lost his cool in a bad situation. His own soldiers died in an act of aggression, so he was in a sense wanting to revenge them. Parker Selfridge's character development also got tossed out the window as well.
No! I wouldn't do that, sir.
But that's a story for another day. I hate that they cut this scene out of the final film, because it shares huge parallels with the events leading up to Sylwanin's death. I feel like they cut this scene out because, you know, Tsu'tey destroying the bulldozers and killing members of the Sec Ops would probably paint him more antagonistic than they would have wanted him to be. Plus, I do get it from an editor's point of view. The moment that Tsu'tey broke in the final edit of the film was perfect. Specifically, the moment where Tsu'tey finds out that Jake and Neytiri made it in front of Eywa.
You made it with this woman?
Oh,
Tsu'tey angrily states the fact that Neytiri was promised to him, and that everything is changing. As mentioned earlier, Tsu'tey only wanted what was best for the clan. Tsu'tey was not upset that Neytiri fell in love with someone else. He was upset because all the humans did was bring him death and destruction. And amongst all this uncertainty, he tries to keep thousands of years of tradition alive. Tradition being the one constant, the only thing to add stability to the situation, and convince him that he's doing a good job as the next clan leader. But he can't even do that because the humans ruined another thing. It's not mentioned in the movies, but in Tsu'tey's path, Tsu'tey ends up rejecting any chance of romance with other women in the Omaticaya because he understood the responsibility he was given. So when Neytiri mates with someone else and the information surfaces, I'd imagine Tsu'tey was probably like, come on. So now knowing how much Tsu'tey sacrificed and how much he was willing to put the people's needs in front of his own needs, it adds so much weight to the scene where he's confronting Jake. Before all this context, Tsu'tey comes across as just angry. But after knowing about all this context, he comes across as desperate and afraid. A Na'vi clan like the Omaticaya are made up of all these Na'vi who strive for unity. They prioritize resolving conflict amongst each other, but when disputes amongst each other can't be settled by stuff like words or compassion, we gotta fight. During these harder to fix disagreements, the Na'vi can challenge each other to one-on-one combat. They call this the challenge, a very appropriate name. The challenge is a more structured and honorable way of fighting for the Na'vi. During the challenge, each competitor is given a blade or a spear. Challenges can end when someone draws the first drop of blood, till the other Na'vi yields, or in some cases, till the other person gets to experience a little adventure called death. A proper challenge starts with the challenger saying,
I challenge you.
and then the other person responding,
I accept.
They can also choose not to accept the challenge as well. When Tsu'tey challenges Jake to a fight, it's implied that they were going to the death. But to Tsu'tey's surprise, Jake bests Tsu'tey and spares him.
Brother, we don't need to do this.
But then even after Jake spares him, Tsu'tey still goes in for the kill. Tsu'tey did grow to see Jake as a brother, but at this point in the story, he feels like he has to take Jake out because the humans crossed a line, and Jake, being a connection to the RDA, would make him the first one to go. But the altercation at the Tree of Voices fueled up all the SecOps members of the RDA. Everyone was willing to drive the Omaticaya out of Home Tree, not necessarily so the RDA could mine unobtainium from underneath it, but more because revenge. All of this led to the destruction of Home Tree on August 20th, 2154. During the displacement of the Omaticaya, the clan leader Eytukan was killed, meaning from August 20th to August 23rd, 2154, Tsu'tey acted as Olo'eyktan of the clan. Eytukan's body was thrown on the back of Tsu'tey's Iknan and brought to the Hallelujah Mountains so his body could be laid to rest in the roots of the Tree of Souls. During Eytukan's funeral, the Omaticaya engaged in this long collective prayer to Eywa. Jake Sully kind of interrupted everything by flying in to show off the fact that he's riding the Great Leon Upturks, going from Scound to Turuk Makto V. Plagued with uncertainty and unable to finish his Olo'eyktan training, Tsu'tey was in serious doubt, questioning whether or not he could actually lead the people, because he was without direction. But in times of great sorrow, Jake did a thing. Jake pleads with Tsu'tey to get the clan together to save Grace. Moat tries transferring Grace's consciousness from her dying human body into her vegetable of an avatar body, but Grace is unable to pass through the Eye of Eywa, so she stays with her, and is potentially reincarnated into Kiri later on, but that's a story for a different day. Knowing Grace and Tsu'tey's history adds a lot more emotional weight behind her death now. Tsu'tey seeing Jake as the new Turuk Makto gave him the guidance he needed. With the death of Grace and Turuk Makto stopping by, Tsu'tey gave Jake permission to address the Omaticaya. This is where Jake delivers a speech that proves he's able to fulfill a leadership role that Tsu'tey was struggling to fill. Tsu'tey wasn't quite ready to be Olo'eyktan yet, but recognized someone who would be. I remember watching this one interview where James Cameron was discussing the casting of Sam Worthington. Apparently, a lot of other top-tier actors were considered for the character of Jake Sully. Cameron went on to talk about how this particular speech was very important during the audition process, as this speech was supposed to hype the characters and the audience up to like a 10.
Where Sam sort of broke out from the others, he was able to do what I call the St. Crispin's Day speech, where he gets everybody to rise up and ride out to the four winds and kind of raises a revolution.
Tell them Turuk Makto calls to them.
I would have followed him. You know, this is a guy that you'd follow. There's not too many people that have that quality, especially at a young age, a quality of voice, a quality of bearing and conviction. right? He has power.
Tsu'tey helped the Na'vi clans fight against the RDA during the assault on the Tree of Souls. When trying to stop certain daisy cutters or daisy chain explosives from reaching their target, Tsu'tey boarded the Valkyrie shuttle carrying said explosives, but he was shot by a member of the Sec Ops, causing Tsu'tey to fall from the aircraft onto the forest floor. In the original script of Avatar called Project 880, Tsu'tey survives the fall, but then Corporal Lyle Wainfleet finds Tsu'tey lying on the ground all injured and unable to move. Wainfleet seizes this opportunity to pull Tsu'tey by his hair in order to cut off his neural cue, leaving Tsu'tey screaming in pain, causing him to eventually die. Luckily, they never shot this scene. In the final edit of the film, Tsu'tey falls out of the aircraft and we never see him again. However, in this deleted scene that is canon, because it also appears in the comics, Tsu'tey does survive the fall. After the battle is won against the RDA, Neytiri, Jake, and the rest of the Na'vi warriors that Tsu'tey had been training for the past 3 months discovered him lying on the forest floor in critical condition. Jake runs up to Tsu'tey, and Tsu'tey claims, and Jake replies the same.
See you, brother.
Jake is the one to inform Tsu'tey that the Tree of Souls and the Omaticaya are safe.
The people safe. They're safe.
And once he receives this info, you can see the absolute relief going through his mind. Tsu'tey is coming to terms with the fact that he can't lead the people, mostly because he's bleeding out from severe internal injuries due to the whole falling from the sky thing. So with the knowledge that he's dying and the people are good, he tells Jake to take his life.
Do the duty of Olo'eyktan.
And appoints him to be the new leader of the Omaticaya. The same kind of ceremony that we saw at the beginning of the Way of Water, except this one involves an actual death, and not a symbolic one. The duty of the new Olo'eyktan is to mercifully kill the old Olo'eyktan, because as Tsu'tey goes on to remind everyone,
This is the way.
Jake abides by his wishes and honorably stabs Tsu'tey in the heart until unaliveness kicks in. Like Grace's death, this was kind of poetic. Remember how Grace claims,
Or what? Ranger Rick, you gonna shoot me?
and then Quaritch replies,
I can do that.
and then he ends up doing that exact thing. The same kind of foreshadowing happens with Tsu'tey. After the humans kind of ruin the Tree of Voices, Eytukan puts Tsu'tey in charge of a war party. Grace tries to calm everyone down, but Tsu'tey tells her to basically shut up, and then proceeds to tell everyone in the clan that they will strike the humans in the heart. Later on, as we now know by now, Tsu'tey ends up getting stabbed in the heart by Jake Sully, which is honestly very fitting because the Tsu'tey Rongloa part of his name stands for eats the heart. There's this relevant moment in Tsu'tey's path where Tsu'tey and Eytukan are having a conversation during Tsu'tey training the other Na'vi hunters. Eytukan is all like, their bodies are young and strong, but what about their minds, their hearts? And then claims that a leader must know his people inside and out. One does not lead a body, he leads a people, body, and spirit. Tsu'tey replies, their hearts are fine, strong even. Then like immediately after this, he's wanting to bring the young Na'vi hunters to the Hallelujah Mountains so that they can make their first bond with an Ikran or mountain banshee. However, they weren't ready and they needed time. The way that I interpreted all this was that Tsu'tey had to learn to be able to recognize if somebody had a strong enough heart, symbolically speaking, which is how he knew that Jake was ready. Well, that and the fact that Jake helped defeat like all the humans. Before Jake goes in for the stabbing, Tsu'tey claims,
I fought with Makto. We were brothers. And he was my last shadow.
Then Jake's shadow looms over Tsu'tey as Jake takes out his blade to stab him, resulting in Tsu'tey's death on August 23rd, 2154. This scene was supposed to play in between the scene where Neytiri is seeing Jake in human form for the first time, and the Na'vi sending all the humans off planet. Honestly, I don't care what anyone says. I may love the deleted scene of Dream Hunt more than anything, but out of the 50 billion scenes that were cut out of Avatar, this has to be the biggest betrayal I've ever witnessed. Leaving this golden nugget of a moment out of the final edit of the film is a crime against everything. It's so heartbreaking too because the scene looks so good, as it was mostly finished in comparison to like every other deleted scene out there. So I'm assuming this was cut out during one of the last drafts of the movie. Even though the Tree of Voices was destroyed, at the end of Tsu'tey's path, Tsu'tey dies and is reunited with the memory of Sylwanin. Oh, and something that you probably had absolutely no knowledge of would be that Tsu'tey had a younger brother named, and I'm totally guessing the pronunciation of this, Arvok. Let me tell ya, Tsu'tey's parents, Ateo and Artsu, aren't really the ones to pick a favorite child, but if they had to pick, it would be Tsu'tey. In fact, they already did pick him as their favorite. They're not the best parents. The reason we didn't see Arvok in Avatar 2009 is because his character wasn't invented yet. That's the real reason. But the reason within the Avatar universe is that Arvok was too young to be part of Tsu'tey's group of hunters getting trained to become warriors. And for those of you wondering, yes, Arvok knew that he wasn't the favorite, as he was left in his brother's shadow even after his death. Tsu'tey's parents very much disagree with what Tsu'tey did, as in giving the role of Olo'eyktan to Jake Sully. They also blame Jake, Mawad, and every other human for the loss of their son. Even though in front of a bunch of witnesses, Tsu'tey chose Jake Sully as his successor, the parents still think that the Olo'eyktan should be Arvok, as Arvok was originally next in line if Tsu'tey died. Ateyo and Artsu wanted Arvok to be Olo'eyktan not because they believe in their son, but more because they wanted to use him as a political pawn. Ateyo even riles Arvok up with conspiracy theories about Jake orchestrating the war between the Omaticaya and the humans, so that the Omaticaya would move to Hell's Gate and be controlled by said humans. Even though the Na'vi sent most of the humans back home after shutting down basically all of their mining operations, plus the remaining humans can't really do anything without the Omaticaya's permission. In fact, post-war, there's a lot of tension between the humans and the Na'vi, with the humans having to conform to the ways of the Omaticaya, but at the same time still needing to mine resources from the surrounding environment so that they can survive. Arvok receiving all this nonsense from his parents is really such a shame, as he was cool with Jake Sully being the new Olo'eyktan, optimistically thinking that Jake would become the kind of leader that the rest of the clan believed him to be, even proposing that him and his parents helped Jake out, mainly because in 2154, Tsu'tey told Arvok that he trusted Jake and knew his heart. But regardless, Arvok was fed lies, and like his brother in the year 2154, Arvok challenges Jake Sully, except this time, Arvok invokes first blood, meaning the first person to make the other bleed wins. In this case, the winner receives or keeps the position of Olo'eyktan. Arvok's father advised him that after he cut Jake, to just keep going, which is just not the way. Unlike his brother, Arvok loses the fight. Jake securing his position results in Arvok angrily throwing his blade at Jake. Jake catches the blade with his bare blue hands, not knowing that the blade had been poisoned by Arvok's parents. While the other Na'vi and humans are grabbing the antidote for Jake, Jake's body is resting under the Tree of Souls, and some of the vines lower themselves to touch down on his face and neural Q, thus making the bond with him. It was the poison of the blade that makes Jake go through this trip that's a little bit more chaotic and scary than his vision quest from the Dream Hunt ceremony. On my post the other day asking everyone if they wanted to see me make a video talking about Tsu'tey so I can continue to make a living off of contributing nothing to society, someone in the comments was like, absolutely, Laz Alonso did an incredible job on the role, especially when it came to the language. Every time I rewatch Avatar, I just appreciate him more and more. And then I replied, awesome to hear, exclamation point. It's such a shame that Laz Alonso isn't in the new Avatars, unless they decide to show memories of him through the Tree of Souls or the Spirit Tree or something like that, which they didn't end up doing. Not in the movies, but in the comics. In Next Shadow, when involuntarily connected to the Tree of Souls, Jake runs into the spirit of what we now know as Tsu'tey. Before Jake got poisoned, Jake had this conversation with Mawad, where he explains that he must not put himself above everyone else, that he wouldn't ask them to do something that he wouldn't do himself, because their suffering is his suffering. Mawad claims that this is the reason Jake was chosen by Eywa, but even after her reassurance, Jake is still beginning to severely doubt his leadership capabilities, as Jake is holding the weight of all the conflict between the Sky People and the Na'vi. He blames himself for both the deaths of the Na'vi and the deaths of the humans, because he turned against the Na'vi while assisting the RDA, and he also turned against his own kind. Tsu'tey's spirit appears in Jake's poison vision to reassure him that he is the leader of the Omaticaya for a reason. The same kind of reason that Neytiri chose Jake, and the same kind of reason that Eywa chose Jake, which was coincidentally the same reason why Tsu'tey chose Jake. He's not an alien playing pretend. He truly belongs in the cycle of life on Pandora. Tsu'tey also gives leadership advice to Jake, like how to accept his flaws and find strength within them, as well as implementing consequences but showing mercy. When Jake fully recovers from the poison, acting with mercy, he banishes Arvok and his parents from the Omaticaya settlement. And that may be the last chance that we see Tsu'tey or the rest of his family. But on the bright side, it's not your last chance to enter G2A's contest, where the prize is a trip for two to Universal Studios' Wizarding World of Harry Potter in the faraway land that we all know as Orlando, Florida. As mentioned like 15 minutes ago, click on the link in the description below, or in the comments, buy something, copy the order number, design and name your spell, and then just press send. You'll be done faster than you can say Avada Kedavra. Wait, oh, also, you can send in as many submissions as you want, as you get a new chance to enter the contest with every purchase. A good way to start is with the Hogwarts Legacy deals they're offering right now. The link for that is also below, so go whip up like as many spells as you want and then enter the contest. But you gotta hurry, because the contest ends February 26th. Anyway, that was my elongated way of me trying to say that's all I had to say about Tsu'tey today, so there were so many unintentional rhymes in that last sentence.